My guest is JoAn Scott. She is the vice president of men's basketball for the NCAA. More importantly, she's a good friend of mine. She's a good friend of the show. She's gracious enough to join us every year before March Madness and give us a behind the scenes look. JoAn, welcome back to Sports Business Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good that it's March, Brian. It's good that it's March.
It is. It's the most exciting time of the year, and you've been doing this for a long time. So let's start there. Like from when you started to now, what are the biggest changes in your job?
Well, NIL again,
Right.
not really so much my job, but college athletics, I think
Hmm.
NIL, but I think it also pertains to the tournament and NIL and players during the tournament. But it also involves our corporate partners being able to align with, collegiate student athletes as they align with NCAA championships and March Madness. So that would be one. Transfer portal, of course, another that affects. The transfer portal goes into effect about, I think it's 9 days or 10 days after Selection Sunday. So the transfer portal has an effect on college basketball. The tournament itself, I would say, in just before I even came in the last 10 years, it's just really grown to so much more than a game or, three games at the Final Four. There's so many ancillary events around it. There's so much programming around it. Not nearly close to the Super Bowl, but growing. So I would say that type of atmosphere that has grown is a big part of it as well. And then just the growth of just March Madness Live and how you can watch the tournament is probably the biggest change in the last 15 years. Is that we've been partnering with Turner and CBS for 15 years.
Let's dig into that. You just said a bunch of things that I want to unpack, but let's start with the CBS Turner partnership. So one of the big changes this year, no more Jim Nance. Ian
Yeah.
Eagle is now
Yeah.
on the call with Bill Raftery, Grant Hill, Tracy Wolfson. I like Ian Eagle a lot. He's one of my favorites. And, not that I didn't like Jim Nance, but I'm really excited to see Ian Eagle on that A team now.
Yeah, and actually, Brian Ian was with us last year. That's what most folks don't know. This is his second year, but he kind of slid into that seat a little bit later as we were in our planning. But I think he just slid in, and that's why I think people didn't even realize he just slid in so well. The transition went so well. He was fantastic. They just have really, really great chemistries. But with Turner and CBS, I would say when it comes to the broadcast, March Madness Live, anybody can watch it. And as we say, you can watch it in the back of your taxi. It's on Max, it's on TNT, TBS, True TV, CBS. Again, 15 years ago, I think I say this every year, they were showing us what we wanted to watch versus us getting to pick what we wanted to watch now that it's all on the networks. One of the things I would say that's a little different this year that is Cosm. I'm not sure if you're aware of
Oh,
Cosm.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
the Spheres in LA and Dallas. They're going to merge their kind of state of art technology, including their little dome and their displays, and they will, I believe, on the men's side, it's 29 different programs or games that they will show within those in LA and in Dallas. So that's that new shared reality kind of experience. So that's what's coming this year.
Yeah, I'm going to be in LA in a few weeks, and I know one of the Cosms is located across from Intuit Dome. So
Correct.
I want to pop in there and see it. I've seen it all over social media. For those who aren't familiar, it's basically like a movie theater. And you can watch the game. You feel like you're sitting courtside. So I think that's a really cool thing to be introducing this year.
Yeah, it really is. And it's going to be live. And again, there'll be 29 different games that they'll select. They have not determined which games yet. Again, you can't do that until Selection Sunday,
Right.
because they don't know who's going to be playing where. But, I think that's definitely a growth opportunity.
All right, so you talked about NIL and being able to incorporate. So some of your big sponsors are AT&T, Coca-Cola, Capital One. I love the Samuel L. Jackson, Charles Barkley commercials every year. There's always other people introduced in those commercials, but I mean, it's really weird. Like the last few years, you could have a current student athlete who could be participating in these commercials if the company wanted that, right?
Correct. I think you'll see some of that this year. We have corporate champions, which AT&T, Capital One, and Coca-Cola are. They've been with us since 2011, when we joined with Turner and CBS on March Madness. So I think they're navigating the world of college athletics. I think I'm anxious to see the Capital One ads. I've usually seen them by now, and I haven't seen them. I think, Super Bowl folks like to see the Super Bowl ads, but I think with March Madness, there's just like, everybody asks me what's going on with the Capital One ads. They can't wait to see the Capital One ads as well. So the ads I think are going to be a really good part of that activation. I also, on site at the Final Four, they also very much activate inside our fan festival, and they even host a 3-day. The corporate champions of AT&T, Capital One, and Coca-Cola, they host a 3-day music festival for us in San Antonio. So Friday night will be AT&T. Saturday will be Coca-Cola during the games live, and they will broadcast that a little bit of that concert into the venue during half times, and then on Sunday is a big Capital One celebration. So really good activations on site. They've just done a really, really phenomenal job, and they're great to work with.
You have a great pulse, obviously, on men's college basketball. And I look at this year's season and I see a lot of parity. But
Mhm.
then I see someone like Cooper Flagg, who really stands out as one of these generational players. How does that impact the tournament and interest? Does it help to have like a power like Duke and Cooper Flagg, or is it better if it's parity and anyone can beat anyone on any given day with a buzzer beater?
Yes, both.
Oh, yeah.
No, I do think television ratings will show you certain programs that you probably read every day. Some of the big games, whether it's football or college basketball, which carry good ratings during the season. So definitely, like North Carolina and Duke, on average, is one of the most watched games
Hmm.
during the years. So programs like that and players are always good for college basketball. But parity is too. People love to see the upsets, but I feel really good going into March this year. We've got some really good blue bloods that are playing well. We've got some storied programs that haven't been in the tournament in a long time that are hoping to punch their ticket on Sunday. So I think going into it, if it's anything like it's been this last week with double overtime games and overtime games, it's going to be a really good tournament. Really good tournament.
For people who haven't listened to our conversation in the past several years, let's go inside Selection Sunday. Maybe you can explain to our audience how that works. I know it's on March 16th. Watching all of the tournament championships kind of come to their conclusion. Take us inside of that room.
Yeah, we start Wednesday on selection week. I would tell you that it's 12 members. That's what's a little different. We went to 12 members, I think, 3 years ago. So we went from 10 to 12 members. They will vote teams in throughout the week. They will seed teams throughout the week, and then we will bracket. And so we spend a lot of time Thursday, Friday, Saturday voting and seeding the teams in the bracket 1 to 68. We also have a principle and procedure that allows us to scrub teams. So we will scrub number two versus number one, number three versus number two. We'll do that all the way down one to number 68 versus 67. We'll compare the teams so that that seed list is as accurate as we can, get it, as competitive as we can get it. And then on Sunday, we do bracketing. We usually start bracketing about noon. Once that we don't just have one seed list because there are, I think, five conference championship games going on Sunday. So we will have different seed lists if one team wins or another team wins, because you could be in the tournament if one team wins, they may not, or they might be a different seed. So we have several contingencies, and then we bracket on Sunday. We go through a bracketing procedure that's it's automated. It's led by the committee chair, but it's all got this incredible computer software that tells us what we can and can't do. And then we have, we could have 14. The most I've dealt with is 14 different contingency brackets. But by
Wow.
the Big Ten championship, which is just 2 hours before the show, we are down to two brackets where we are ready to go on submitting to CBS for the selection show, which
I
will
would
be a
imagine, 25 years ago, there wasn't AI. There weren't these
no,
computer
no.
tools that you could use to kind of help crunch all the analytics. So I would imagine that's only gotten better and better as we've gone along here to help that committee come to a decision.
Yeah, I would say to you, it is a lot more data. If you would say to me, what is a lot that's changed or improved, is there's a lot more data at their fingertips. There's a lot more statistics. There's a lot more information like player availability that we pull up immediately on a game on whether a player played or not in a game that they're
Mm,
discussing,
yeah.
or a win or a loss we're discussing. And then this year we added a new metric for the first time, which is called wins above the bubble. So that's another metric that really just kind of compares your team and how many a team on how many teams that they've played and won versus a bubble team that might and how many games that bubble team would have won. So there's so many metrics, but the new one for this year is the wins above the bubble. So I'm anxious to see how that goes in the selection room.
So we've talked about the data and everything, and I know you and I have kind of joked about this before in years past, but if I'm a CBS Turner exec in the room, this is a TV show. I want some drama. I want some matchups of like past coaches who have faced off before or former players who transferred going against the school they transferred from. Does any of that enter the conversation or is it all based on analytics?
No, it's not based on analytics. If it were based on analytics, then we don't need a committee. And you're not it, and I would say to you, you're not the first that would say, "Oh my gosh, this would be great TV watching." We have been asked that. It is absolutely 12 different opinions. There is no one that is in there that is supposed to be advocating for any team.
Hmm.
And it is about analytics, but it goes in the end, it goes to the committee member and how they select whether one team is better than another team with principles and procedures that are applied. But as far as having someone in the room and having cameras in the room, the thing about the room is you have to be able to trust those other 11 that you're going to be able to say what you want to say and it's not going to get repeated
Right.
or it's not going to be shared. I mean, it's a code of silence in there. So that's why the committee members seem to feel very comfortable sharing and giving their opinions. Again, they have to they vote the way they vote. They can give factual information, but again, they're not there to advocate.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there should be cameras in the room when they're doing the selection process. I'm just saying I think it plays out during the tournament if certain matchups
Oh
materialize.
yeah.
We've seen that over the years where things, have just fallen into place where again, former athletes have played their team or coach who coached here, now coaching here goes against their former team. It seems like it always works out wonderfully that way.
There's a lot of people that think there's conspiracy behind that. And when we bracket, and we do a lot of we do a lot of orientations. We did an orientation in February, and we do test bracketing, and it just happens. And we do it via almost an Excel sheet that's computerized. We don't even know who's going to be playing whom when we do it. And then when the bracket is, sent out, that's when you see who's playing whom. It also is not the responsibility of the committee to project who's going to win. And
Right.
a lot of time, those matchups come two or three matchups down the line in the bracket. It's not for the committee to say, well, this team, it will win, and they would end up playing that team. That's not the committee's role, is to project who wins.
Tell us who's on this committee, not specifically by name, but is it athletic directors? Is it school presidents, coaches? Who is it?
It's a mixture of athletic directors and commissioners.
Okay.
And what it is we have 5 regions across the United States. And so we're represented within the East, the Southeast, the Midwest, the West, and all the regionally. And then we're always represented by those regions. And then we have someone from the 4 autonomy conferences that is assigned to it. And then the other 8 are assigned by the basketball performance, kind of a equation ratio of who's had good performance in the tournament over the last, I think it goes every 10 years. So those are assigned by conference. The conference assigns the person. It's up to the conference to assign if they want to pick their conference commissioner or an athletic director from their school. It's a 5-year term.
Wow.
And it's a 5-year term.
And you've always had meetings with the broadcasters too, leading up to the event. What takes place in those meetings? Is it everyone just like re-engaging with each other and saying, "Hey, looking forward to working with you for the next 3 weeks," or are there specifics that are discussed?
Well, we have two meetings. We were just in New York last week with what I would say more of a production meeting on what's
Mhm.
coming up with the production and what we want to do with, the venue and the production of the games and even the studio shows. So we walk through a lot of, and again, this COSM and things like that.
Right.
So we walk through that and we have been having those meetings, but that's kind of our like buttoned up, like, okay, here's what we're doing. Is everybody on the same page? Next week, we will do a virtual conference with all the talent, the producers, the directors, and just walk through officiating and what can be different. A lot of them are college analysts, but some aren't. So if they have questions for our coordinator officials, we're there. We talk about a lot of the calls throughout the year that we get questions on. My boss, Dan Gavitt, will speak. So we get to them so they can ask questions that we can hopefully give them good speaking points as they're broadcasting the games.
I hope this is just a personal hope that somewhere during the tournament, CBS has something planned as a tribute to Greg Gumbel, who was part of the coverage for so many years and has passed. And, I got to know Greg a little bit way back in the day when I was the voice of Loyola Marymount basketball. And just, when I think of the tournament and the coverage of the tournament, Greg is one of those people I think of first.
You know, I didn't know Greg very well, but like it's just such a great testament to the individual who he is because everybody that I know has said he could be the nicest
Yeah.
man in the business. I know they're doing some things. And I would say to you, we already saw that on the selection orientation or the top 16 seed in February. He was typically on that show. So we will feel his presence, but we'll also, feel a big hole left in our hearts for what he brought to the month of March.
Yeah. Some of the analysts, like I love that Grant Hill is the head of USA men's basketball, and we saw him in Paris at the Olympics and, all over that. But then we get his incredible insight during March Madness. I mean, this is a great coup for CBS and Turner and the NCAA to have him and his mind because he played at such a high level at Duke. And I feel like, he played in the NBA. He just knows basketball inside and out at every level.
I think that's why he and Raft and Ian are just such a good team.
Hmm.
It's just they come from different like decades of life of what Raft being a former coach
Right.
and Grant being the younger player and having played in the tournament and know what's going through in folks' minds and following Duke and knows what's going on in Duke's mind. So I think that's really I think what makes that a unique partner kind of like partners together and because they all bring such a different opinion from different generations even.
The student athlete experience. Give our listeners a little bit of insight on that. I know that, you've done a great job, the NCAA has, with, especially as you advance in the tournament, making sure families can come and watch. And I just remember again, as the radio voice at Loyola Marymount, the players on that team, they remember playing in that tournament 35 years later, and it was one of the highlights of their life. And for a lot of these student athletes, this is something they'll never forget.
Yeah, it is. And it's something, if you said to me what has changed the most in 10 years, I would say that the thing I'm the most proud of the NCAA and the men's basketball staff is focusing on that.
Hmm.
And we have a student athlete engagement group that has a student athlete from every conference that we meet with once a month. Austin Mutri on our staff meets with
Wow.
them. We run a lot of things by them. We ask them a lot about a lot of ideas. So it's really helped us. But the student athlete experience, I'm going to talk just about Final Four right now. But we do now that big, team welcome like the bowl games do. When they
Right.
arrive, we give them an immediately, you're here with the trophy there so they can see it. Amazingly, the one thing they love is police escorts, which is just, a
That's
part of
hilarious.
the situation. But they love police escorts. But then when they get to the hotel, we do the journey of the student athlete from when you arrive till you get on your bus. It's decked out in Final Four decor. It is got decor all over the outside of the bus. Then you go to your hotel. We have a welcome party at the hotel. Once they go up to their floor, we have a lounge for the student athletes. Inside the lounge is pool or video games or a pool table, anything that they want in that room that's just for the student athletes. then we leave them alone because they're there to win. This is the difference here. They're there to win a championship. We provide a lot of student athlete gifts, but then when they get to the basketball arena, we do the same thing. The stadium, I call it a basketball arena, and I'll explain why I say that. It really is a football stadium. But when they get to the stadium, we walk through their journey. From the minute they get off the bus, the hallways are decorated for them, the carpet is down for them, their locker rooms are decorated like it's a home locker room
Mhm.
with their decor, their logo, their colorway everywhere. And then as they enter the court, that whole passageway is decorated for the student athletes behind the scene. And then the venue is a football venue, and we decorate it like a basketball venue. So we like to call it a basketball venue. So all of those are taken in. We put Final Four folding chairs that we give them with the Final Four logo in front of their lockers. We have golf carts that take them to and from their interviews. We do then, during the week, like I said, that's where the coaches are like, let us handle the teams, but we give them access to the Fan Fest privately where they can go. But the thing I want to really touch on is the NCAA about 10 years ago started giving a $3,000 stipend to 15 players from the team for their family members to travel. And should you win the semis and make it to the finals, they get another thousand. And then we moved the families to the first 4 or 5 rows across from the bench and behind the bench, so they're nice and close to the floor. It goes on and on. But those are some of the things that have taken, place in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great experience, but it's really interesting to hear, you're taking this football stadium. So San Antonio and the Alamo Dome will host this year's men's Final Four. 73,000, I think, is the
Yeah, I
capacity.
think that's what we're going to hit. Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, if you're a student athlete, and I don't care if you play, a Duke, which I've been to Duke now, and their stadium's not that big, like 73,000. It's like the scene in Hoosiers when they
Yeah.
go from playing Little Hickory to like they go into the Big Gem. You're just like, whoa, this is just mind-boggling how big it is. But I love that you have their colors and that you really try and make it a basketball arena, even though it's like probably the biggest venue most of these kids have ever played in.
Yeah, it is. And that's why we have a center hung. We might not need a center hung, but you need a center hung when you're playing basketball. That's why we have what we have. And of course, it's still it's still a big venue, okay? But we do what we can to make sure that they understand they get plenty of time to get out there and practice. They come out and practice on it. We make sure they have closed practices on there. They'll have an open practice on Friday with some fans in there. It's not nearly as full as it should be, but Reese's Final Four Friday is on Friday. So we just try and give them as much experience in there as they can get before they play.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you're talking about Final Four, and I know that you've got this laid out for a number of years forward, and you work with these local organizing committees, which really help you on the ground in the advance of the tournament. You've usually got a university that is kind of the host with the organizing committee. But how long has it been since you guys have been in San Antonio for the Final Four?
Yeah, we were in there in 2018, so it hasn't been that long.
Okay.
But you're right. We could not run March Madness. I think this is interesting to some folks without our member institutions and conferences. They help us execute this. The University of Texas, San Antonio, and University of Incarnate Word are helping us on site.
Hmm.
At all, I mean, we're at 8, first and second rounds. We couldn't do it on our own. We're working with our member institutions and our conferences that do this with their conference tournaments and run their venues or help run venues. So we could not do that without them. We are already working on 2026, which is exciting. Indianapolis will host for the first time. We have never done this. The Division One, the Division Two, and the Division Three men's championships, plus
Wow.
NIT championship, will be hosted in Indianapolis in 26. I just hung up. We just had a planning call with them. We've been planning with them for over 6 months already, and we'll get full swing into that when we get back from San Antonio.
It makes a lot of sense because NCAA headquarters, for those who don't know, is based in Indianapolis. So for you to be able to do this, like you and your staff are right there. You don't have to travel a long distance to go deal with this. So do you think that could be something that, you look at going forward?
So right now, the Division Two and Three championships we host every 5 years. That was supposed to be hosted in 2020, around every 5 years. It was supposed to be
Mhm.
hosted when we canceled March Madness. So this was is the rotation that we brought it back. It could be something in the future that we review. We're not sure. We really took the viewpoint of in 2021, which was 5 years, will be 5 years from the Final Four. We brought all of our teams to Indianapolis into a bubble. In 2026, we're going to bring all of our championships into Indianapolis, into this not so much bubble anymore, but into Indianapolis. So that was the reasoning behind that.
Interesting. All right. Before I let you go, again, you've been around this both with the NCAA, you worked at Nike, you've worked at USA Basketball. Is there a memory from March Madness that stands out to you? And I'll tell our audience, I've mentioned a few times, I was the radio voice of Loyola Marymount. I was actually calling the game the night Hank Gathers collapsed and died on the court. It's one of my worst memories of my life. But then one of my best memories of my life was the team's run through the tournament to the grade eight. They lost to the eventual champion UNLV with Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon and Greg Anthony. But it was such a magical time, and the energy and electricity in the arenas. JoAn, like you, I've been around a lot of sporting events in my life. I've done this show for 21 years now. I don't think I've ever been around anything as electric and as memorable as that LMU run through the NCAA tournament in 1990.
I had so many memories going to games before. Okay, I
Hmm.
really did. What comes to mind when you say that is I do two things every year. I go to one of the general admission gates where anybody can come in, and I watch who comes in and how excited they are when they get in. I don't know if they're worried their ticket might not work or not, but they're just so excited. Like they're high-fiving, they're coming in groups of, kids and men and women and grandmas and grandpas. It's 8 to 80, okay? And that is cool because that I can see they're true fans. And then before the game tips, I always go look at the highest end zone seat on the end zone, which is the cheapest seat in the venue, and it's full. And I remind myself, we have to make sure that person has a great experience
Mm.
because they want to be here. So those are good memories. But I do have one, I will say. I will admit this, that I didn't used to probably admit this. But in 2022, when Mike Krzyzewski played his last game, who
Mm.
I've known over, gosh, now I hate to admit it, 30 years, or 40 years, he had his last press conference. And, in my mind, with that many gold medals, John Wooden was phenomenal. But with that many championship and his gold medals, with my USA basketball experience with him, knowing that it was his last one, was very special. I had escorted his entire family and extended family to the back to the press conference so that they could hear it. And I think my best memory is watching his grandkids and his daughters watch, knowing that was his
Mm.
last press conference. So that was a pretty special moment that I got to be there for that and see that and help his family get to experience it as well.
Yeah, that is an amazing memory. And, something about JoAn for our listeners, you have built such incredible relationships with these coaches, athletic directors, commissioners. There's a lot of trust that goes into people bringing their teams to the tournament and making sure it's going to be well organized and even, just the rules and regulations and I think having you in this position, the NCAA is very lucky to have you in this position because not only do you bring your expertise and knowledge of how to put this on, but you have these relationships, and those are really irreplaceable.
Well, I would say thank you, Brian, but I would say to you, there's a good team at the NCAA that puts these events and our membership that puts these events on. It's a lot of operations with 68. Something will always goes wrong. It's how you deal with it. I think the coaches' relationships do matter. I think everyone, I would tell you most everyone, but I would tell you everyone that has worked with me would tell you that I'm a truth teller.
Hmm.
And so I've always told the truth to coaches more than what they want to hear. So I don't know if that has what's brought that trust in me that I hear them. I don't necessarily respond right away, but when I do, I'm also going to make sure I'm telling them the truth. So sometimes they like that, sometimes they don't. It's a very heated moment. The thing I realized the most coming to work is the intensity of the game. Lose and you go home.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit different than a regular season game. It's you know it's an intensity that probably my first year I was surprised by. So you have to take all of those into consideration, all those emotions into considerations with coaches when you're working the tournament.
I think it's such an important point that you bring up. I don't want to just cast it aside. Being a truth teller. I mean, I feel like I'm the same way. And I think what I've learned in my life, we've both been around some pretty noteworthy people. They respect you when you tell them the truth more than if you just tell them something they want to hear. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think a lot of it is how you deliver the message.
Sure, of course.
I think that's a big part of it, and having the reasoning behind, and just I think that's where your reputation can come in, that they know you've done and you're looking out for them, and you've gone to the extreme for them. But I think I do agree, and I've had several people. I had a conversation this morning with someone who agreed with me that does come with some respect. Yes.
Yeah. JoAn Scott, Vice President of Men's Basketball with the NCAA. Uh, Give us, just before I let you go, like your schedule. So selection Sunday, and then, are you traveling to all the venues, or I'm here at Final Four on location, but are you all over the place? Or are you in a central location?
Yeah, well, our selections are here in Indianapolis, so that is good. I can come home and throw some laundry in on Sunday night after selections. Then I get in the car and drive to Dayton to the first four. In between, we do calls. It's a very well-oiled machine. It always has been, but we do calls with all the teams and all the sites on Sunday night, Monday. Doing that, we go to Dayton and teams are arrive. Actually, it's amazing. Teams arrive less than 24 hours after sometimes 20 hours after the selection show into Dayton. We have practices. I'll spend Monday through Thursday in Dayton. We have our officially officiating calls. Everything's done from Dayton. Thursday morning, I get up early, fly to Atlanta. I'm in the Turner Studios with Dan Gavitt, our coordinator officials, Bubba Cunningham, our chair, Keith Gill, our vice chair, our broadcast folks and media folks and other staff members, and we're just putting out fires and
Mm.
solving problems and working on tip times. I'll leave there Monday after first and second rounds are over. I'll go to four regionals, so I'll be in Indy again for a day, about 24 hours, 48 hours, and then I'll go to Newark. Then I go to Atlanta, then I go to San Francisco and back in Indy because we are hosting a regional in Lucas Oil Stadium. Spend a day here and then go to San Antonio. So it's a little bit of madness for travel as well.
Well, you do a great job, and I appreciate you joining me every year to give us a little taste of March Madness. Again, JoAn Scott, Vice President of Men's Basketball for the NCAA. Continued success to you. Best of luck with the tournament this year.
I'm going to use a line and close a line from Clark Kellogg that I love. Take time to embrace the joy of March Madness.
I love it. Thank you so much, JoAn.
Thanks, Brian.